Hello, everyone, and welcome to this SOLIDWORKS 22-minute webinar, Untangle Data Complexities with SOLIDWORKS Manage. My name is Barb Schmidt, and I will be your host. We'd like to jump right in and get started as we have a lot to cover in 22 minutes. But just a couple of quick housekeeping items I wanted to point out before we get started. First, if you're using GoToWebinar, please notice the full screen button to move in and out of full screen mode. So we suggest using full screen mode. If you have any questions during the presentation, please enter them in the questions section, not in the chat section. We will be answering questions after the 22-minute presentation. Also, we will have a couple of poll questions at the very end of the presentation. We ask you to answer these multiple choice questions quickly so we can keep within our time frame. I will let everyone know the results of the poll as well. Please note that you'll be able to download a recording of this webinar after the presentation. You'll actually get an email tomorrow with a link that you can go to and get the recorded version of the presentation. And with that, I would like to introduce to you our first presenter today. Steve Fick is a Senior Technical Manager for SOLIDWORKS. He has over 15 years of SOLIDWORKS experience as a machine designer, solution consultant, and all-around SOLIDWORKS fan. He currently focuses on the distributed data management offering, which includes PDM Professional, SOLIDWORKS Manage, and XLead OnePart. All right, Steve, take it away.
All right, great. Thanks, Barb, for that introduction, and welcome to everyone on the call. We're always excited and grateful that you're willing to join us as we go through today's webinar. So before we dive into the topic of untangling your data management complexities, we've got kind of an important thing to touch on, and that is the fact that football season has started. Now, it's been an interesting one so far. Living in Indiana, I get the privilege of rooting for my Indianapolis Colts, although they're 1-2 right now, but there's a lot of season left to go. But as you look at football, we're oftentimes quick to want to look at the players, the amazing, almost superhuman feats of strength that many of these players have. But what I get interested in more in is oftentimes the plays that these players run. When you look at these plays, they oftentimes are the difference between the winning teams and the losing teams. Their ability to execute well, to take all these amazing players with their talents and bring them together in an organized way that oftentimes helps to lead to a win. Now, you're listening to me, and I imagine you're not wanting to talk about football for the next 22 minutes, and that's fair enough. Although many of you probably could, given the chance. But take a moment to consider how closely the idea of a play in professional football relates to the operational excellence of your company. In fact, when you think about it, the engineering processes and business processes that you run, those processes are often fairly closely linked to plays. They've got much of the same idea associated with them. So what I'd like to do over the next 20 minutes or so is build on this analogy, if you would permit me, and let's take a few minutes to dive into this. So if we think about football and that analogy, what do we start with? Well, we start with players. That's kind of at the center of all this, and those players are taken, and we tend to assemble them into teams. Right? And those teams then go off and they execute the plays that we just spoke to, and ultimately they follow a schedule each and every season that they have to make sure they commit to, and what we get to watch. And speaking of watching, if those games are not broadcasted, then there's typically not the extra financial gain that the teams are looking to achieve. That's really the important part, is making sure you and I are able to watch the games. So how does this relate to data management? Well, Think about this. For us as engineers, we tend to start with the documents, the components, the assemblies, the things that make up our designs. We tend to organize those into logical structures in our bills of materials. Those parts, components, and bills of materials, they then go through processes. Right? This is how we get them approved and how we make sure that they're ready for manufacturing and that their quality is right. We tend to follow a project schedule. Many of us do, to ensure that we hit our delivery dates, to ensure that we're on time and that we're delivering our product to market when it's expected and when it's timely. And ultimately, that content has to be accessible, right? We have to make sure that people can access what we've done, that they can manufacture it, that they can service it, that they can do all the things that are needed to be done for us to be profitable and to actually experience the financial gain that we're hoping with our new products. So there are some complexities to each of these, and let's dive in and take a look at how we can help to solve many of those complexities with our data management solutions. So we'll start in the center by looking at documents. This is really the fundamental piece of this. Many of you may be utilizing network drives or your local computer drive to manage these documents, and there's some inherent challenges to that strategy. Now, luckily for many years, we've had PDM Professional, and PDM really has gained its acceptance and its popularity because it's built on top of Windows Explorer. Now, why is this important? Well, it allows us to easily browse to our design data. This is basically an Explorer environment that has a SOLIDWORKS brain, if you will. We can preview documents, we can look at their data cards and consume critical pieces of information about the designs, and we can easily see where they've been used. And of course, we get the great eDrawings preview of those documents. Now, that metadata can also be customized and displayed right in the Explorer interface. We can look at who has a part, what the description, the part number, and of course, all of it is searchable so that we can quickly find what we're after and be able to use it and leverage it. And PDM also does a great job of displaying the CAD bill of materials. So that's right at our fingertips. You can imagine someone in purchasing or someone in manufacturing being able to quickly look at the CAD bill of material and get the information they need. So for many years, PDM has really been at the center of our ability to manage these documents well. Now, as we move out, we start to talk about bills of material. Now, I touched on bills of material just a minute ago, and we talked a little bit about it, but by and large, that's the CAD bill of material. That's what's produced when each and every one of us are going through and modeling up our designs and creating what we need inside of SOLIDWORKS. There's some additional capabilities that are often needed as we extend out, as oftentimes manufacturing needs a specific bill of material that maybe includes tooling or includes additional components that we're not actually going to model. Packaging, shipping slips, etc. These might either be a manufacturing or a product bill of material, and this is where we start to look at needing some additional capabilities, needing to extend the ability of PDM into SOLIDWORKS Manage. So this is an exciting new product that we've introduced over the last year or so. And it really takes the capabilities that you maybe have grown to love inside of PDM and extends them to some broader areas, one of which being bills of material. So what's nice about Manage is that I can have my bill of material, I can have multiple bills of materials for a design, and I can start with the CAD bill of material. So I'm not losing anything. I can actually copy the CAD bill of material, that structure, right over into the new bill that I'm creating, this one for, let's say, Mexico. I can add non-modeled parts. So these could be my electrical plug, and I'm going to need about 4 of those. And I'm going to need a circuit board that goes along with this design, so I can look for that. I'm going to need one of those and add it to my bill. And because I've copied this over, I can also come in and actually remove components. So maybe for when this is manufactured for in our Mexico facility, we don't actually manufacture it with that specific component. Now, I may have additional information that needs to be added. So for instance, I may need to add an effective date, and I may want to indicate the supplier that's being utilized when we build it in that facility. So I've got a BOM that's been created, I can save it, and I can compare it. So I can actually compare my Mexico BOM with my USA BOM, and I can understand what are those changes, what are the differences, and this bill of material compare extends. It can either be the same version of a BOM, or as you see here, I'm comparing 2 different bills of material to get a better insight into how they look. So added capabilities to bills of materials allows me to extend that CAD BOM into areas that I may need for my broader organization to fully define what my product's going to look like. So let's talk a little bit now about processes. We started this presentation kind of honing in on the fact that processes are a lot like plays, and there's a fair, it's a fair comparison, I think. When we look at our organization, we may have engineering change or engineering change notice processes that need to occur. But we may also have NPI processes, new product introductions, or PPAP processes that need to take place. And these processes may or may not have a document associated with them. Oftentimes they're going to, but oftentimes they're initiating them. There may not be a specific CAD document as part of the initiation of a process. So how do we handle that? Well, Manage does a great job of this as well. I can actually kick off a process directly from inside of PDM. So here inside of PDM, I'm kicking off my my ECN just by simply clicking on an item that I want to have be part of this process. This opens up Manage for me and allows me to actually start filling in the key information about this change. Now, this is great because it's content that you get to define what's important, and you get to define what's required. So here I'm filling out who's gonna ultimately review this right on the fly. I can decide that. I can then key in other key pieces of information like the time it's going to take to change or the cost associated with it. When I have that information added now, I can start running it through its process. And you'll notice that as I look at the history on this process, each item actually highlights the stage of the process where it took place. And I can actually look at what's next in the stage and potentially who I'm waiting for next. So processes are great. They can be utilized for changes, ECs, like I just showed, but you start looking at stage gates, or maybe there's required tasks that have to happen as part of a process. We can actually capture that information as well. And we can utilize it to communicate more effectively. I can capture comments and feedback inside of a process as well. So processes are really about just making sure everybody's executing on the same steps each and every time. We've got a great way to capture that and execute on it. All right, so let's talk a little bit now about projects. For many of us, projects, we may be doing some level of project management, but oftentimes our designs, our new product introductions, they get complicated. There's a lot of moving pieces to them. There's a lot of people involved. There's a lot of things that have to happen in the right sequence if we're going to bring a product to market in a timely fashion. Now, for many of you, you might be using Excel. These are tools that are quickly available, and so you may be outlining each of your tasks and your stages and who's assigned to them. But oftentimes we need a little bit more. We need to be able to visualize what this looks like, and Manage allows us to do this with Gantt charts. So I can see each of my steps. I can see each of the tasks that are associated with a specific stage, who it's assigned to, what percentage complete that task is. And it gives me great insight into who's assigned to them. So I actually have a tasks board that I can look at, and I can visually see who's lined up for each stage and what task they're working on. Now for users, this shows up in basically an inbox. It's a lot like Outlook. And so whether I'm the individual user or I'm a project manager, I can click on each member of my team and I can actually see the tasks that have been associated to them. And for the user, they're bolded, just like an incoming email might be, to know that they've got it in one. And boy, Todd, he's a little behind on a few of these, and apparently has some urgent tasks. He's got another task that I'm actually going to change to urgent because we need to get some action done. Now, what's nice about this is that any of these tasks, I can fill out additional details. So if there's specific steps that need to be completed as part of that task, I can do that. And I can actually attach documents right out of PDM directly to the task. So think about how powerful that is, right? As a user, I get a task. I'm notified that I have to do something. I don't necessarily even have to go search for it because someone has attached the document to the task. And it's not a copy like an email might be. It's literally going to take me right to the spot inside of PDM, inside of my controlled environment, where I can start to work on that task and do whatever's required of me. Now, one of the other differentiators about Manage is that a project can have a bill of material. So this is an interesting concept. If you think about the idea that for many of you, maybe the project is the piece that's critical, and the bill of material may need to be part of that. What's nice about this is we can use the same techniques that I showed you earlier to actually build out a bill of material associated with the project that reflects ultimately what might be shipped to the customer. You know, for a custom automation builder or a machine designer who's going to ship multiple pieces of equipment, it's kind of nice to be able to have the bill of material, the final bill, be connected directly to that project, so everybody has visibility to it. So projects keeps everybody connected and helps hopefully you to remain ahead of schedule and or at least on schedule for your next your next design project. The last piece is, how do we make this all accessible? We need to be able to make sure people can access the data that they need. It's important, you know, if we're actually gonna get this manufactured and we're gonna get input from others. So this is something that both PDM and Manage can assist us with. The idea being that we need to make sure this content is visible and it's understandable as well. So with Manage, what's nice is that we can dashboard and report. So it's pretty interesting if you think about as either a user or a project manager being able to get insight into specific aspects of our engineering business through a dashboard. We can also look at a report. So maybe I need to create a report of all the bills of material. So it's great that I can line each of them out, but maybe I need to create a complete report that has, you know, everything, called a 110% BOM, if you will. Has all the items across Mexico, US, and whatnot that we ultimately are gonna need to manufacture this. Or think about project reports. You know, it might be great that everybody has access to the project, but you know, maybe ultimately you need to pull together key bits of information to provide to your end client on what the status of the project is, where we are, what we've been working on, any issues that have come up. And these are customizable. These are things that you can tweak and create to present information that's important for you. Having access to the processes. You know, you may want to include a vendor or someone outside to have access to a given process, or you may have a field team that needs to be able to kick off you know, an engineering change request. And you'll notice this is through a web browser, so it becomes a nice way of being able to access that data. And we extend, when we talk about data through the PDM Web 2 client, we can access the CAD files as well. So we've got live eDrawings preview that we can interrogate, look around, explode, all the things that you've come to know and be familiar with eDrawings, we can have through a web browser. So making the content and the information accessible, visible, just ensures that everybody's getting the information that they need to be successful, right? And so if you're successful, hopefully you start to being able to execute as that pro football team, you know, and leveraging the amazing talent that I'm sure each and every one of your engineering groups has in coordinating their, you know, their processes in a way that executes well. Now, so where do you go from here? Well, by all means, please visit the launch.solidworks.com distributed data management for more information on either PDM Pro or Manage. And also, as Barbara mentioned, look out for the recording of this webcast, where you'll get a chance to watch it again and let some of this information sink in a little bit further.
Awesome. Thank you, Steve. That was a ton of information, great information. I also, we just real quickly want to ask a couple quick questions, and this is just so we can kind of know who needs more help and how we can help. So the first quick question, and then we'll get to your question specific for Steve. What is your level of interest in SOLIDWORks? And that's just kind of how, so we know where you're at in the process, so we can kind of manage how best to help you out. Thank you very much. And again, if you have questions specific on these topics for Steve, if you could type them in the question section, he will get to those. Thank you very much. And just one more quick question. Can we provide you with any further information? And if so, how best can we provide that information? So you can just quickly answer those, and then Steve, feel free to jump into some of the questions.
Yeah. So one of the questions that we have is comparing the BOM capabilities between PDM and Manage, the BOM compare capabilities. So, you know, the BOM compare capabilities, PDM does have this, and we can compare versions of the same component or the same design or revisions. Manage allows us to do the same, but it extends it. It actually allows us not only to compare versions, but we can compare completely different bills of material. So I can actually take two different designs and compare their bill of materials. So there's some added capabilities there inside of Manage to interrogate the bill of material. Can Manage users push tasks to non-users through Outlook? And is there an Outlook add-in to communicate task completion? So right now there is not a Outlook add-in. It is something that we are looking at, and the tasks do exist inside of Manage. So that's where a user has to come in and access their assigned task. Can the price data be generated or be captured and used by the company's global system? Potentially, yeah. I mean, we can have price data that exists either as part of the CAD document or inside of Manage. And Manage has a number of ways that we can push and pull data. So that's something that we can explore. When we start talking about other business systems, SOLIDWORks has really done a nice job of trying to be available to communicate with those systems. But as always, the devil's kind of in the details. So it'd be something that we would want to explore, likely with your reseller a little bit more on what you're trying to accomplish. So can you export the BOM out as an Excel file? Yep, that is possible. The process of moving from PDM Pro to this is really quite straightforward because this is an extension of PDM Pro. What happens is basically a sync occurs, and the information that's already in PDM just gets pulled over into Manage. There's not a migration or anything like that necessarily needs to occur. It's just simply a synchronization that occurs between the two systems, and then you can start to leverage that content. Project BOM's parametric and the same object as a BOM on the assembly drawing. So yeah, so you can add the project BOM. You can add the CAD structure, and it can be linked to the assembly bill of material. And then BOMs that you create inside of Manage can be referenced on a drawing as well. Are there different levels of Manage? Yes, they align with much like what the levels of PDM are. There's a Manage editor, a Manage contributor, and a Manage viewer. This is an additional product. So PDM Pro has its own license, Manage has its own license, but Manage is an extension of PDM. So as I mentioned, there's not necessarily a migration. It's just think of it as extending the capability that you have inside of PDM Pro. There's a contributor, an editor, and a viewer. Those are the three types. So, all right. So it looks like the questions we have. Again, thank you so much for attending. And if you have additional questions or have additional interest, by all means, reach out to your local reseller, as they'll be happy to help you navigate through those additional questions.
Excellent. Thank you, Steve. And I appreciate everyone's time. And again, we will be having another webinar at 2 p.m., the same exact webinar. So if you have some coworkers that you would like to bring in and learn more about our distributed data management solutions, you can do that, as well as sharing the recorded version, which, like I said, you'll get a link on your email too. So again, we appreciate everyone's time. Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of the day.
Thanks, everyone.